I'm Bobby Kleinberg. I have the privilege of chairing the session. And one of the things I always find at ITCS is I hear a lot of enticing open questions. So I wanted to start off this chair rant with an open question. I'm hoping that one of you can actually present the answer to me by the end of this session. I've asked Anna, who put the program together, for the answer to this open question, and it's still open, so I'm really hoping one of you can enlighten me. So here's the 4 papers that we have in this session. I'll let you read the titles and authors. I won't read the authors' names to you because some of them are from foreign countries, and I might embarrass myself trying to pronounce their names. But I do want to tell you some of my personal thoughts on what I find exciting about these papers. So I'm going to start off with this first one about scheduling with explorable uncertainty. And there's a famous problem that I have looked at quite a bit that is one of the sort of most famous and classical models of explorable uncertainty. It's called Weitzman's box problem. It's from an economics paper in 1979. And it's a search problem in which there are n metaphorical locked boxes, each of which has a prize inside, which is a random number. You know the distributions from which the prizes are drawn. And you can pay some cost to open a box and inspect the value of the prize inside. You can also stop at any time and claim the largest prize that you've uncovered so far. And the problem that people in this area of optimal search theory like to solve is how should you schedule these inspections and when should you stop? It's a difficult problem because you have to balance the cost of further exploration against the potential benefit of revealing a bigger prize than you've seen so far. And in principle, this optimal policy could be an exponentially complicated object. It needs to specify a decision to make at time t for every previous t-1 step history that you've seen. The amazing fact about this problem is that there's an extremely clean and succinctly describable optimal policy that this person, Martin Weitzman, discovered in the 1970s. And the maybe less amazing thing is that if you vary any of the assumptions on this slide, the ability to find a clean optimal policy goes away almost immediately. So, if the prizes are not independent but correlated, or if you impose a budget constraint on the total costs that the searcher may invest, and any of a million other variations that you can come up with, instantly you lose this very clean, nice characterization of the optimal policy. Encore.
Are any variants known to be NP-hard? Like with correlation?
I think I can instantly describe an NP-hard variant to you, which is you put the boxes on the vertices of a graph, and you say that you're only allowed to choose multiple prizes, but they have to form an independent set. Okay, and then even if the costs are 0 and you know all the values, then you've got an NP-hard problem. Okay, but short of trivialities like that, for variants that would be computationally easy in the case where all the information were known, we don't have any hardness results for this type of problem. This is a special case of the multi-armed bandit problem. And okay, if you generalize sufficiently from there to restless bandits, that you get to some known p-space hardness results. Okay, I wasn't expecting to take questions during my chair rant, actually. The scheduling with explorable uncertainty is a paper that introduces a similar looking model with a very different and much more complicated objective function. Okay, so in their model, they have jobs with processing time upper bounds pi bar. And at a cost of 1, you can test job I. That's like opening a lockbox. And then you find out the processing time, which is some random number pi, which is guaranteed to be between 0 and this upper bound. And your 2 choices for a box are you can just schedule it without opening it, then you pay the upper bound, or you can open it, cost of 1, and then schedule it at a cost of pi. And okay, again, the policy has to solve the sequencing problem of how to interleave these inspections of boxes and scheduling jobs. And as I said before, almost any variant on Weitzman's problem immediately becomes impossibly hard. So I was quite amazed that the authors of this paper were able to get quite tight bounds, both upper and lower bounds, on the competitive ratios achievable for this problem. Moving on to the next one. So the next paper is about the Steiner forest problem, which is a special case of survivable network design. This is the problem where you're given a set of vertices. You're given a bunch of terminal pairs, Si and Ti, and a connectivity constraint for each such pair, saying that you have to design a graph where the min cut between Si and Ti is at least C sub I. And if the cost of creating edge UV is some specified number C of UV, then you have the survivable network design paper. In a famous and celebrated paper in 2001, Kamal Jain showed a 2-approximation algorithm for this based on iterative rounding. It means not only does the algorithm need to solve a linear program, it needs to actually repeatedly solve linear programs, one for every edge of the network that it builds. And a big challenge in approximation algorithms since then has been to try finding a combinatorial algorithm for this problem because, of course, the computational cost of solving a sequence of linear number of LPs is quite high. The paper that you're going to see doesn't solve that problem, but it does present a combinatorial algorithm for the special case of Steiner forest. So Steiner forest is when the connectivity requirement for each terminal pair is just you need to have a min cut of size bounded below by 1. Or in other words, Si and Ti need to be in the same component of the graph that you're building, but that's the only connectivity requirement. For this problem, there's a famous combinatorial algorithm by Agrawal, Klein, and Ravi from a little more than 20 years ago, which is a primal dual algorithm. So it's LP-based, but the algorithm is combinatorial and runs quite efficiently. And for 20 years after that, nobody knew any other combinatorial method for solving the Steiner forest problem until 2 years ago, Gupta and Kumar found a greedy algorithm with a slightly worse approximation factor. This paper that we're seeing today gives a local search-based algorithm, which is also highly combinatorial in nature. It also has a sort of double-digit approximation factor. And so the big news here is not getting a better approximation for Steiner forest, but it's that we're accumulating more and more novel and innovative ways of solving this special case of survivable network design, and hopefully thereby getting closer to the big prize of a combinatorial algorithm for survivable network design. Okay, by way of introducing the next paper, which is actually the last paper in the session, I'm skipping over one. I'd like to pose a puzzle about linear independence. Probably many of you know the solution to this puzzle. How would you define a set of n vectors so that every k of them are linearly independent and every k plus 1 of them are linearly dependent? If you've never seen this before, a simple solution is to set the ith vector to be the sequence of powers of the number I from the 0th power up to the k minus 1st. This works because, well, clearly every k plus 1 of them are linearly dependent because we're in a k-dimensional vector space. And if any k of them satisfied, if there was a linear form that vanished on k of these vectors simultaneously, the coefficients of that linear form would define the coefficients of a degree k minus 1 polynomial that has k distinct roots, and we know that that can't happen. So, okay, that's a very nice explicit solution to that puzzle. The puzzle is a special case of a problem which in general says we're given a bipartite graph with n vertices on the left side, and we want to find vectors such that the linear independence relation on subsets of those vectors coincides with the transversal matroid independence relation on the nodes of this graph. In other words, you want a subset of these vectors to be linear independent if and only if the corresponding subset of the left side is matchable to the right side. A simple randomized solution to this problem is to make a matrix with a pattern of 0 and non-zero entries encoding the adjacency relation of the left and right sides of the graph, and then fill in random numbers for the asterisks. Then the de Millo, Lipton, Schwartz, Zippel lemma tells you that with high probability that will succeed in achieving the property articulated in this problem. And it's been a big open question to find an explicit construction that achieves the same result. This paper doesn't resolve that open question, but it achieves relaxation of the goal. And I think I will let the authors describe to you exactly what the relaxation is. But one nice consequence of relaxing the goal and achieving it is they show some nice applications in parameterized complexity theory. And finally, the third paper in the session is entitled Selection in the Presence of Implicit Bias. I've posted, because Manish Raghavan is presenting the paper and Manish loves soccer, I've presented here a picture of the coaches of all the teams in the Major League Soccer League. One thing you may notice about them is they're all white males. Okay, the NFL, not Major League Soccer, but football, American football, has instituted a rule called the Rooney Rule that says when hiring, you must interview at least one minority candidate in an attempt to mitigate the deplorable lack of diversity among their coaches, which is almost as bad, but I think not quite as bad as Major League Soccer. And the paper is taking a very fresh and interesting theory look at the question of when might the Rooney Rule be appropriate. I'll let Manish present to you what they have found out about that question, but there's one fact from their paper that I found very intriguing, and on the off chance that he neglects to include it in his talk, I will present a teaser to you. Okay, so here's another puzzle. People are laughing. This stands for small country, but I just couldn't fit the word small on the slide. I don't know what you were thinking. Okay, so you know, suppose you're in charge of immigration policy for the United States, and you're only allowed to bring 2 immigrants into the entire country, and you just want to maximize the combined productivity of the 2 people who immigrate. Okay, so let's say people's productivities are IID samples from a power law distribution, and you have 2 policies you're considering. One, which apparently is what our president is considering, is to allow the best 2 non-Haitians to immigrate and just put a cap of 0 on the number of immigrants from small countries. And another policy would be to impose a quota of 1 on each of these groups. Bring in the best from Haiti and the best from the rest of the world. Okay, so you know, I actually didn't look up the ratio between the population of Haiti and the population of the rest of the world, but I'm guessing that it's like 1 to 1,000 or something like that. But the surprising fact is that if the power law distribution is sufficiently heavy-tailed, it can actually be better to implement policy number 2 than policy number 1, even if you don't have a fairness goal, but just a maximize the expectation of the sum goal. And with that, I will turn over the floor to our first speaker.